Welcome back to this month's PAR Ambassador videos. My name is Austin Heil, and for this month, I'm going to share with you some of the scouting technologies that we use on our farm. Remember when we talked about last month the technology that I had on the planter? V-Drive, Delta Force, Smart Firmer, along with the 2020, 2630 and the iPad in the cab. Well, now that we're out of the cab, we have a crop behind us. Now this is where the iPad really comes in to give us that opportunity and insight so that it allows us to go back and take a look at some of the issues that we may have. So before we get and dive into some of those, I want to show you some of the tools that we're going to be looking at today. So the simple tools that we have is a shovel, a tape measure, a field guide, water, a bucket so we can look at some roots, an external GPS antenna if you would like to use one if your iPad doesn't have one, the drone, and then the iPad. So we're going to go ahead and start right now with the iPad. So when we want to start understanding some of the field variability and understand if we need to look at those areas to figure out is that an issue or not. So the first area that we're going to look at is, I know when we started planting, this first strip right behind was our first pass that we made. And I know that as we were trying to understand everything that was happening on that first pass, there's always some bugs that we have to look into. And so one thing that we definitely had an issue with was the downforce. And as we start looking at some of the downforce that we have on here applied, we can clearly see right here on the iPad that we have a streak of red. So the left side of the planter, we were having an issue with one of the wings. Because one of the wings was not set properly because of the hydraulic hose that we blew, the hydraulic downforce was not able to do its job properly, which in turn the seeds did not get planted deep enough. And so this is one exact area when you have an iPad coupled with field view that gives us that insight of what can happen. So to give you some insight of what that looks like is really where the water and the corn plant will come into play here. So as we use the water, we can use it to swoosh around and clean the roots off. So as we start looking at the corn plant, what we can see is when we look at the depth of the plant versus where the seed is planted, we can see that we barely were able to get 1.5 inches in the ground. And so this is just one example of where delta force and making sure that you have proper downforce in the field really comes into play. Because if you don't have an automated or active downforce, how do you know that you'll be able to plant your seed at the proper depth throughout the field? So then when we want to start looking at scouting and we want to look at population, we'll use the tape measure and we'll measure off that 17 feet 5 inches and be able to find, what our actual emergence is versus what the iPad actually shared. And then throughout the year for scouting, if there's anything that you're unaware of, there's also a paper copy, and many universities also have a digital copy as well. So the next thing that I want to show you is ag maps. So the two apps that I really use for scouting is first is Climate Field View with the iPad. And then the second one that we really use is Ag Maps. So Ag Maps is our scouting and mapping software that I use with the UAV. When we're going to scout like this field behind us, it's 71 acres. And I want to be able to have that full insight and detail of what's actually going in the field. And so what's really neat about Ag Maps is Ag Maps gives us that ability to be able to collect the imagery from the edge of the field. And then on top of that, it allows us to pick areas of interest by dropping flags on the screen and be able to look at those areas in high resolution by allowing the drone to fly down to about 6 feet above the canopy and capture those high resolution images that then automatically puts it into the report. And so as we fly and get some more data, I'll be able to show you some of those screenshots of what Ag Maps is really able to do. So thanks for joining us for this month as I shared with you some of the tools and apps that we use on our farm.